A lot of Sonic the Hedgehog fans seem to hold the Archie comic book series in high regard. I don't, and here's why. Well, now that I've reviewed examples of bad romance written by Ian Flynn and Carl Bollers, it's time to complete the set with a little something by everyone's favorite, Ken Penders. Okay, let's just get the elephant in the room out of the way right now. Back in 2011, Penders claimed copyright on everything he'd written for Archie Sonic, and in retaliation, Archie took him to court and tried to sue him. I say tried because it turns out Penders made a pretty strong case for himself, and the contract that Archie claimed he signed, giving them exclusive ownership of all his work on the comic, didn't actually seem to exist. After floundering about uselessly for 2 years, the judge threatened to throw the case out of court if Archie didn't pick up the pace, so he settled privately with Penders. The exact terms of the agreement aren't known, but it seems Penders got his copyrights because he's now going ahead with a graphic novel based on his creations, and Archie pushed the reset button on the Sonic comic universe to remove everything that was now property of Penders. To say the fans were upset about this would be putting it lightly, and these days the mere mention of Ken Penders is enough to incite a flame war. Ian Flynn has even made mentioning the P word on his personal forums a punishable offense. With all that in mind, people tend to view Penders' work on Archie Sonic in a very negative light, and lambasting it has become something of a favorite pastime in fandom circles. That's not to suggest it doesn't deserve to be lambasted. Heavens, no. Penders wrote some pretty lousy comic books in his time, and this episode I'm going to show you 2 of them. Say hello to issues 155 and 156, which comprises the Line of Succession story arc, a thrilling tale in which Tails declares his hatred of Sonic, Sally is forced to marry Antoine, and Sonic crashes the wedding and makes some questionable leaps in logic. Let's begin. The story opens with Antoine bringing King Max a nightcap and shooting the breeze with him about recent events. Although he continues to chat like normal, Antoine's thoughts reveal that he's really eager for Max to down that drink. Almost immediately after doing so, the king is overtaken by fatigue and decides to take a nap. For some reason, the fact that he only came over all sleepy after taking that nightcap doesn't seem to arouse his suspicions at all. As he departs from the royal chamber, Antoine inwardly reveals that he plans to seize control of the Acorn Kingdom, and not even Sonic can stop him. Speaking of Sonic, Tails just so happens to stumble across him playing kissy face with Fiona in the bushes. This unnerves him mightily, and he asks how Sonic could betray him like that, with Fiona of all people. Fiona, offended at the suggestion that she's unworthy of Sonic's attention, demands to know what Tails' beef is. He sheepishly admits that he still harbors feelings for her from back when he met her robotic duplicate, and when the real deal had turned up, he'd hoped to rekindle the relationship. Just so you know, way back in issue 28, Tails had been seduced by an android based on Fiona that had been deployed by Robotnik to lure him into a trap. Eventually the deception was revealed, and the robot was destroyed in the ensuing combat, leaving Tails with a lot of messy emotions to sort out. Years later, the real Fiona turned up, and Tails began crushing on her in some very unsubtle ways, and then she started getting sweet with Sonic, which leads us to the present. Fiona points out that the robot duplicate Tails fell in love with was based on a younger version of her, and that she's now quite a bit older than him. Tails keeps pushing the issue, but Fiona rejects him about as tactfully as she can, explaining that she prefers guys her own age, like Sonic. Tails takes it with surprising maturity, and no, he doesn't. He handles it in the worst way possible, and I do mean the worst way. Instead of getting mad at the girl who turned him down, he gets mad at the guy she's dating instead of him, who also happens to be his best friend and who has been nothing but supportive of him. This panel right here is up there next to the slap in my mind. Both of them feature characters who are supposed to be level-headed and reasonable, blowing their stack because their love interest rejected them for completely valid reasons. And Tails has the bonus of not even directing his vitriol at the person who said no, but rather an innocent third party who has done nothing to earn it. And just to complete the scene, Tails runs away crying like a spoiled baby. To recap, in the space of 3 pages, Penders has stripped Tails of his intellect, his integrity, and his dignity. I swear, it's like he was going out of his way to make Tails look like a total butt monkey. Ugh. Moving on, Queen Alicia arrives back in Knothole and gives orders for her husband to be checked out by a physician. Dr. Quack prescribes lots of bed rest and a daily dosage of pills, which he gives to Antoine for safekeeping. You can almost feel the evil laugh he's suppressing. Hours later, Sally arrives to check up on her father, who tells her that due to his ill health, he and Alicia are stepping down and appointing her the new queen. But first, she must be married, so the kingdom will have a king. She reacts to this with shock, and her shock turns to abject horror when she finds out she's expected to marry Antoine. Well, geez, lady, I know he's not a dreamboat, but he's far from the worst option. Or at least he wouldn't be if he wasn't attempting murder, but she doesn't know that. But more than her groom being Antoine, Sally takes issue with the fact that she's being forced into an arranged marriage, Dark Ages style. Alicia rationalizes it by revealing that she and Max were paired up by an arranged marriage before they even knew each other, and later came to genuinely love each other, as if all arranged marriages work out this way. The possibility that Sally and Antoine won't come to love each other and instead wind up locked into an unhappy relationship till death do they part doesn't seem to have occurred to her. And as if that didn't already turn me against Mr. and Mrs. Medieval Values, Max's response to Sally's continued objections is that he's just glad she isn't marrying that commoner, and then he reminds her of what happened last time she made a decision regarding her love life. Sally is driven to tears by his cruelty and runs away. First of all, Max, you ungrateful little tool. That commoner happens to be the only reason why a raggedy little behind has been turned into scrap metal by now. You want to show a little respect, Second, you're bringing up an isolated moment of history on Alex as if that completely invalidates Sally's ability to think for herself. She may not always make the right decisions, but then again, neither do you, and she's certainly not stupid like you're implying. But hold up, where did Max and Alicia get these rotten attitudes from anyway? They'd always seemed like decent enough folks to me. What happened? I can only assume that this is Penders doing the same thing he did with Tails, giving heroic characters a boost in jerkery for the purposes of soapy melodrama. Here's a tip, Ken. Have the plot serve the characters, not the other way around. Over at Sonic's place, we find him strumming an electric guitar in the company of his mother, who asked him to play Strawberry Valley, a song that Sonic thinks is lame and so yesterday. And if that was a dig at the Beatles' Strawberry Fields Forever, then my respect for Penders just slipped even lower. But then Bunny shows up looking distraught, sits down next to Sonic, and announces through a torrent of hysterical sobbing that Sally is marrying Antoine. Sonic asks if this is a bad joke. Sheesh, why does everyone seem to find the idea of these two getting hitched so horrifically awful? Do they all secretly hate Antoine or something? Sonic tears out of the house and makes way for Castle Acorn, angrily wondering to himself why Sally didn't tell him she was getting married, even though they're still not on the best terms. Actually, if I were Sally and I was marrying another guy, I wouldn't be in a hurry to tell my ex-boyfriend either, because he doesn't need to know. At the royal gates, Antoine stops Sonic and demands to know what his business is. Sonic tries to blow him off and force his way in, but ends up on the wrong end of a sword. The two fight, and Antoine gets the upper hand, kicking Sonic off a bridge and declaring that next time he won't be so generous. I'm honestly not sure who to side with here. Sonic is going on a jealous rampage and disregarding authority, and Antoine is resorting to violence just a little too quickly. Much as I'd like to think Penders is deliberately writing them in shades of gray instead of black and white morality, this is more likely a result of poor characterization. Inside the castle, Antoine pays a visit to Sally's room, where he finds her brooding over her impending marriage. She barely asks him whether he's marrying her to spite Sonic, or if he actually believes they could ever love each other. Oh, here we go again with the dumping on Antoine. I totally understand her being upset about the arranged marriage. I would be too. But she seems more put out about the fact that she has to marry Antoine. Plus, she's assuming that he is responsible for the whole situation with no evidence to back up her position. Antoine manages to soothe her feelings somewhat by telling her that he doesn't want to marry her either, but he must do so out of duty to the king. Is this how Max and Alicia felt when they got married? Because I really doubt that true love could spring from such a forced and unwanted relationship. The next morning, Quack calls Antoine and the royals into Max's room and demands to know if the king has been getting his medicine. As Sally dashes into the room, Quack tells her that Max is now in a coma and he has no idea how long he'll be under. This news awakens a new resolve in Sally, and she marches out of the room, ordering Antoine to prepare for the wedding. Nothing like some good old family tragedy to make you accept your bleak, bleak fate. Down in the Commoners district, Sonic bids his parents goodbye and zips off to take care of some business. And by business, I of course mean crashing Sally's wedding. Let me reiterate that for all Sonic knows, Sally is marrying Antoine of her own free will. He isn't carrying out a daring rescue mission to save her from a lifetime of partnership with a man she doesn't love. He just doesn't want her to marry anyone but him. And remember, Sonic is all but dating Fiona at this point. This is tantamount to cheating. A better writer would have framed this as a jilted ex-lover tragically unable to move on from a failed relationship, not some big stinking hero gallantly saving the damsel in distress. And he's too late anyway. The ceremony is already underway by the time he leaves, and after spending a few minutes mentally reassuring herself that life with Antoine can't be all that bad, and that her residual feelings for Sonic will pass, she says her vows and becomes Antoine's lawfully wedded wife. The newlyweds walk down the runway, Sally inwardly expressing her woes, and Antoine going over his scheme to take the crown. Meanwhile, Sonic pays a visit to somebody. I have no idea who this guy is, and Penders is going to great lengths to keep his identity secret. Any of you guys got the answer? I'm genuinely curious. Anyway, he begs the stranger to stop the wedding, but no dice. That plan having failed, Sonic rushes off to crash the wedding, but a passing couple informs him that the ceremony is already over, and takes the time to remind us that Sonic and Sally are exes. I'm not sure if this is to keep new readers informed, or if it's Penders subtly attempting to frame Sonic's actions as something other than ignoble. And in case there is any doubt in your mind about Sonic's motivations, he outright states in this panel that this is all wrong, she should be with me. Well, there you go, Sonic's not being a hero, he's just being a jealous harpy wanting what he can't have. He tries to break into the castle, but Antoine seems to have anticipated this, as the guards show up with orders to arrest him. He tries to escape, but is easily captured. He begs Sally to ditch her husband to realize that he's the one she wants, but she refuses and orders him dragged away to the clink. Antoine excuses himself from the table and slips off to the king's chamber to give him the final dose of poison. As this all happens, a shadowy rider shows up at the castle bearing a ring with the acorn seal on it. The guards stop him at the gates, but immediately bow to his whims when he reveals his face. The writer orders Sonic's cell opened and reveals himself to be none other than Prince Elias Acorn, Sally's estranged brother who had fallen out of favor with his parents for ditching his royal duties, moving to the other side of the world, and marrying a commoner. Ew. Sonic, shocked at his sudden appearance, asks him why he chose to come back. Elias explains that these are dangerous times, and the transference of power is the most dangerous thing of all. Letting Sally take the throne and elevate her husband to king would pose too much of a risk, and the only way to be certain that nothing could go wrong is for Elias to take the crown himself. Wow, does he trust his sister at all? Apparently he's so convinced that any man she decides to marry will be a conniving, backstabbing traitor that he rode halfway around the world to stop her. Like father, like son, I guess. Okay, yes, he's actually right, but he's right for the wrong reasons. Just like Sonic, he has no dirt on Antoine, nothing to imply that the dude isn't trustworthy. Basically, his whole argument is that Sally, who has loyally stayed by her parents' side and protected the kingdom at risk of her own life, can't be trusted with power. But he, who ditched his birthright because it didn't suit his fancy, totally deserves that crown. Talk about a double standard. First Tails, then Max and Alicia, then Sally, then Sonic, and now Elias. Everyone in this comic is being a jerk. Elias and Sonic walk into Max's bedroom where they find Antoine looking suspicious. He manages to save face with a hasty alibi and concealment of the syringe he was about to shoot into Max's arm. Elias informs him that he now intends to take the crown, thereby depriving Antoine of his power. Outwardly, he plays it cool, but on the inside he's furious, and he immediately decides to use the potion on Elias instead. They all head back into the banquet hall, and Elias announces that he wants that crown. Alicia christens him king quite gladly. In fact, she's so happy about it that it's kind of disgusting. You have no idea how long I waited for you to take your rightful place. Do you know how close I came to crowning that tramp daughter of mine? And I even forced her to get married for it. Can you believe that? But who cares about her anyway? All hail King Elias, the true heir to the throne. As if I didn't already dislike this woman. Off in the background, Antoine plots to eliminate both the new king and his wife and child, thereby forcing the Acorns to crown Sally, and by extension, him. He walks up to Elias to shake his hand, with the syringe hidden in his sleeve, ready to jab the king's wrist. But Sonic sees it and tackles Antoine to the floor, exposing the syringe for all to see. Antoine tries to frame Sonic as the would-be killer, but that doesn't fly. Furthermore, Sonic deduces that this is not the real Antoine, but rather Anti-Antoine, an evil mirror universe twin. How does he come to this conclusion? He claims that Antoine was no great shakes as a fighter, but Bunny told him that the scar on his face was given to him in the midst of combat, implying that he certainly could hold his own in a fight. Oh yeah, the scar. That's what clinches it for Sonic. He claims that no one, not even Bunny, could explain where he got that scar. Except Dr. Quack. Why don't you ask him? But apparently combat skills and a scar are evidence enough for Sonic to conclude that this is Antoine's evil twin, because it's not like people ever change their moral alignments or anything. Especially not in this comic. No way. Despite his questionable logic, Sonic whips out his own link generator and takes the imposter back to Anti-Mobius, where sure enough he finds the real Antoine asleep in what appears to be a hospital, and they both jump back to Mobius Prime. The next day, Sally is still sulking around, but Elias walks in and hands her his first official proclamation as king, the annulment of her marriage. Elsewhere, Sonic lures Bunny out of her house with the promise of good news and reveals Antoine, fresh-faced and scar-free. They immediately kiss and make up. With everything all wrapped up, Sonic resumes his date with Fiona as if he didn't just spend 2 whole issues desperately chasing after the forbidden acorn. Instead of questioning him about that, Fiona presses him about the time Bunny tried to flirt with him. If I were her, I'd be just a bit concerned about the possibility that he's just using me as a replacement for Sally, but that doesn't even seem to cross her mind. And in the final panel, we get a reminder that Tails is still sniveling over Fiona. You know, just so we're aware that this particular bit of character mutilation isn't leaving anytime soon. Well, that sucked, didn't it? There's hardly a single scene in the story where someone isn't being a jerk, a moron, a drama queen, or all 3 at once. I'm not going to accuse Penders of having an agenda. No, wait. Yes, I am. Because rumor has it that Carl Bullers intended for Antoine's darker and edgier attitude to be legitimate character development, but Penders wrote this story to undo it because he didn't like it, and he did it with one of the dumbest, most cliched plot twists in the book. Way to go. There are plenty of other unsavory moments here too, moments that make me question whether he put any thought into what he was writing. And you know something else? If the official synopsis is to be believed, this story wasn't originally going to be about all this love drama. It was about a mysterious illness attacking all of Knothole. That could have been pretty interesting, I think. How it mutated into the product that wound up on newsstands, I don't know. So, I guess this makes a nice trilogy, huh? 3 bad romance stories that feature writers indulging in their least favorable qualities. Next time, I think I'm going to review something with a little less who is marrying who and a little more action. That ought to be fun.